Ravens flock, good evening. It is 7:18 Eastern on Tuesday, August 27th. We have reached the dog days, and we have almost reached 3.5 hours since deadline, right, since the deadline passed for 53-man rosters across the NFL, in terms of when they needed to be trimmed from 90 to 53. The Ravens are one of, if not the only team to have yet to share publicly their 53-man roster. So I have a life, contrary to popular belief, outside of my daily streaming efforts. And so I decided that I would start tonight's stream, talk about some other things, talk about some of the cuts that we do know, and some other reports, also get into some national content, and hope and pray that perhaps the Ravens roster drops while we are live. With that in mind, if you could be as attentive as you have ever been as a listener or subscriber or consumer of mine, and make sure that you hit me in the live chat if this indeed gets posted. Perhaps it's an if. I don't know if it's an if or when tonight, but we're going to start anyway, and let's get into it. We'll begin here today. Tonight's live stream is brought to you by my friends at Preston Automotive Group. More on them in just a second, but stop me if you've heard this bullshit before. Yeah, it's a bunch of BS right here. An anonymous defensive coordinator recently gave a quote on Lamar Jackson. And the quote, in part, read that he can't pass when he has to. That's a direct quote from an anonymous defensive coordinator who, let's be honest, probably has lost to Lamar in his career. And yet, part of his analysis or part of his critique going into year 7 for number 8 is, quote, he can't pass when he has to. He did acknowledge how wonderful of a quarterback he is. He did acknowledge how many games that you can win when Lamar Jackson's your starting quarterback. But as we've seen in the past, sometimes, for whatever reason, these little digs are added into evaluations. It's not surprising. We've seen it before. We'll continue to see it. I'm guessing it's from somebody who stylistically cannot get behind Lamar Jackson, right? Just cannot get past how different he is, both stylistically and just overall as a player. He's not your prototypical quarterback, right? He's not going to be filling up or stuffing up the passing statistics, but damn it, he can absolutely pass when he has to. Did he do so effectively in January against the Chiefs? No, he did not. But guess what? Not a lot in recent memory. Not a lot of quarterbacks have had a whole lot of success against the Chiefs. Take a look at this graphic, courtesy of First Things First. You've got Tua, Josh Allen, and Purdy, all with passing statistics and overall numbers up against the Chiefs in the 2023 postseason. Now, did all of these guys play and perform better in terms of statistically against Kansas City than Lamar did? Well, the numbers would say yes, perhaps with the exception of Tua. Josh had a passer rating of 86.1. Brock Purdy, 89.3 with 255 passing yards for Brock to Josh's 186. They each threw a touchdown in a clean game in terms of turnovers, no interceptions. Lamar threw for 272, threw for 1 touchdown and an interception and a passer rating of 75.5. Tua, a $199 passing yards, passer rating 63.9. He threw a touchdown and a pick. What does this tell me? Well, it tells me that the Chiefs defense, one of the key components to their dynasty that they're in the middle of right now. What it also tells me is that, yeah, while Lamar hasn't gotten it done consistently in the postseason, why should he be dragged with a quote like that? He can't pass when he has to? No, he hasn't passed consistently enough in the postseason. We've seen that. Hasn't been good enough. Look at his MVP year. 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a passer rating of 102.7. That's overall in terms of regular season play. They had the bye, of course. What followed was the divisional round against Houston, where he had a clean game in terms of turnovers, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 121.8. Yes, the drop-off was significant. It's a big drop-off when you look at the AFC Championship against Kansas City. But to throw out a blanket statement because of a small sample size in the postseason, and what have you done for me lately, and him not being able to have short memory and looking at the AFC Championship, which is fair, shouldn't equate to, let me go throw out this blanket statement, he can't pass when he has to. It's ludicrous. But this is the type of stuff that Lamar's dealt with all throughout his career. He'll continue to do so. We know that. That's how it goes. We can still hold him accountable in terms of what he has or hasn't, in this case, been in the postseason. But to attach that kind of statement to Lamar's name, to me, is unfair. It's disingenuous. It's lazy. And it's a narrative that is so stale and that has followed Lamar throughout his career. Rico from BMO checking in the live chat right now says it's all a way to distract Lamar. Samuel says it's the goalpost moving, same BS. Jamari says they love disrespecting Lamar. He's not like the rest, so they target him. Shelby says, yawn. Those bozos are so boring. Are there any smart sportscasters? Oh, yeah, RG3. But he wasn't appreciated. Not appreciated enough to be kept by ESPN, and so he's starting his new venture. I just saw that today. I'm excited for RG3. Mr. Chief, Bobby's already cursing without Sarah. Out of respect to Sarah, I do not curse in front of her. Yes. We will get to this in just a bit. Stone Talks Ball, already getting fired up about Dayton Wade. We're, of course, hoping to learn where he might be as far as 53-man roster projections are concerned. Sean says, I'd rather be studying KC than giving airtime to this. We will turn a page for sure once we get past the roster cuts. Definitely we will turn a page. I'm fired up about it. Coming up on a week out from the start of regular season play, Sarah and I, beginning next week, will officially start to convert into in-season mode. Lots more content, weekly game previews with beat reporters from the opponent's team. It's going to be a lot of fun. But as of right now, which is why I'm starting elsewhere, we're still waiting. The only team that has yet to actually announce the 53-man roster are your Baltimore Ravens. David Rice is crossing his fingers for Bo Braid, the undrafted rookie out of Maryland at safety. I think he's done enough, David. I think he has. I'm excited for him. Raydog says, go back and look at the playoff game, Ravens versus the Bills. LJ8 almost beat them single-handedly. Nobody did anything but him. That was the concussion game. Had he not been taken out of that game with a concussion on a botched snap, if I'm remembering correctly. Was that Matt Skura? Am I remembering that correctly? Was Matt Skura the starting center for that Bills playoff game in the divisional round? Or was that the wild card round? It's several years ago, but I do remember that, Ray. I think Lamar's postseason performance has been misunderstood by some, but that doesn't take away from that it hasn't been good enough. And certainly doesn't take away from the significant drop-off in overall numbers, passer rating, ball security, touchdowns, all that, everything that goes into your statistical categories as a quarterback. Everything's dropped off in the postseason over a 6-game sample size. Let's talk about what you see in the headline here. NFL analyst makes wild Ravens wide receiver statement. Trevor Sakema from PFF is who I'm referring to, and this is what he had to say when asked about his prediction for the breakout Ravens player on offense for 2024.
get Tylan Wallace a little bit of love, the fourth-year man out of Oklahoma State? Because I really liked Tylan Wallace when he was at Oklahoma State. Yeah, okay, he's a little bit smaller. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but and he was productive for the Cowboys. Almost 1,500 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns during his sophomore season while he was at Oklahoma State. Kind of went through some injuries and didn't have as good of a year after that. Ended up getting drafted in the fourth round by the Ravens. But Dalton, I was shocked by this. He has yet to play more than 100 snaps in any regular season over the last 3 years. This preseason, he's got an 89.2 overall grade. That's one of the highest. I think it might be the highest on the team. Give Tylan Wallace a shot. I feel like we just keep throwing, Nelson Agholor and Rashad Bateman and these guys out there. And I just feel like their ceiling is capped at this point. It would be futile to just watch these guys out there and say, yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Just wait on it, the big time breakout year. Tylan Wallace feels like he might be ready to break out. And I know he's sort of a similar build to Zay Flowers. Maybe they want somebody bigger out there. They want a bigger receiver, somebody that can handle those extra responsibilities. But you got some tight ends that can do that, right? You can flex Mark Andrews out to be able to do that. Maybe even Isaiah Likely. You've got some size at tight end. Tylan Wallace has been productive for you, and this preseason feels like his most productive preseason yet. I'd love to see him get some more roles in the offense when the regular season comes around. Now, I understand it's a team that likes to run the ball a lot. Tylan Wallace, at his size and stature, isn't exactly going to be a great run-blocking wide receiver for you. But when you got to pass the football, let's get this guy a little bit more involved. I'd love to see a Tylan Wallace breakout season, especially for as well as he is playing in the preseason.
Trevor Sakema with a glowing endorsement of Tylan Wallace, formerly of Oklahoma State. We remember this time last year him sharing with the media that he was essentially biting his nails right up until the tail end of last year's 53-man roster deadline. The call never came, which is a good thing in the NFL. You only get a call if you've been cut. So they inform you via phone call typically, and that call never came for Tylan. What also has yet to come for Tylan is a consistent role within the offense. We know that he was one of the heroes last year with that unbelievable walk-off punt return to the house that nailed that game against the LA Rams. But what we haven't seen him do yet is flash consistently as a wide receiver. And so, Trevor, you heard him there. From the offensive side of things, he is his candidate to be the breakout player. And here's that quote, just in case you missed it. Give Tylan Wallace a shot. I feel like we just keep throwing Nelson Agholor and Rashad Bateman out there, and I just feel like their ceiling is capped at this point. It would be futile to just watch these guys out there and say, yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Just wait on it, the big-time breakout year. That was the quote that stood out to me. That's the quote that I tweeted. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Bobby Baltimore. Same thing on Instagram as well. Let's break this thing down piece by piece. Do I think Tylan is capable of being more of a contributor in the NFL for this Ravens team than just special teams, and whether it's a gunner, whatever, punt return specialist? I think the answer is yes. We've seen flashes of it in the preseason. We've seen some in regular season as well. And if there's a year to do it, oh my Lord, it would be right now. We know that outside Zay Flowers, there are a lot of question marks. There are some uncertainty within the wide receiver room. It's not magnified as much as it would be if you didn't have the deepest tight end room in the entire league with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Charlie Kolar. Perhaps Kadir Ismail makes this team if they didn't have that deep of a roster. Now, that was one of the things we'll get to in just a bit when we start talking analysis of the 53-man roster. Jeff Zrebiec and others noted that according to their sources, Kadir will be waived, will be cut. And if he clears waivers, should be a candidate to land on the Ravens practice squad. And wow, based on how seamless of a transition for him it was from wide receiver to tight end, you just get the sense that he's got a bright future ahead of him. Where I kind of lose Trevor, though, where I lost him, when he says, I feel like we just keep throwing Nelson Agholor and Rashad Bateman out there, and I feel like their ceiling is capped at this point. That might be the case for Nelly. We're not expecting him to be anything more than a complimentary piece, right? A few hundred receiving yards, be a reliable pass catcher, be a veteran for an otherwise young group. We're not expecting him to be any needle-moving acquisition at this point coming up in year 2 for the Ravens. For Rashad, you better believe that we all still feel like you would think. I'm not saying we're feeling like it's likely, but I think the majority of us in Ravens Nation have a collective belief that Rashad has a ceiling, and it's a high ceiling. The thing is, he hasn't gotten anywhere close to touching or reaching his ceiling. And so I don't know if I'm ready to give up on him yet. I'm certainly not optimistic or confident going into the year. But what I am is hopeful that given his team-friendly extension that they signed him to this offseason, which keeps him in Baltimore for the next several years, given where the wide receiver market is, EDC and the Ravens could make out like bandits should he perform, should he have a breakout season. And so while I hear what Trevor's saying, it's been tough to be on the Bateman bandwagon for those of you who have in recent years. But at the same time, I'm not ready to just be like, it's over, because we have seen flashes from him when he and Lamar have both been healthy and available throughout this summer. Yes, we have also seen the disconnect that's taken place, but with this duo, particularly when it comes to the deep ball last season. But there is a ceiling. And if that ceiling can even be halfway reached for Rashad, the Ravens will be better for it. Their receiver core will be better for it. The overall offense will be better for it. Rashad himself, of course, will get a boost of confidence, and it'll sure help out Lamar a lot as well. Prince Lee, I appreciate you checking in the live chat. Thank you for being here. DLC West is already talking other receivers and 2 undrafted rookies, saying that he hopes the Ravens keep Dayton Wade and Bo Braid. We'll talk about each of those guys in just a bit. Tila says that she gives Bate 2, maybe 3 games to see if she's sold on him. Okay. Let's just hope he's healthy. Sustain health. Zone 16 says that Bateman is average at best. He certainly has been so far through his career, below average. And I say that with the expectation of him being what we all thought he could be as a former first-round pick. Dre Deasy noting what I saw on Twitter just a short while ago, that Tim Patrick got picked up by the Detroit Lions after being cut by the Denver Broncos. We'll revisit that in just a bit. Jamari, not sold on Bateman at all, says he's not even going to get more than 350 receiving yards this season. We do not know Dayton Wade's immediate future in Baltimore yet. We're waiting anxiously for the 53-man roster to be released. Dr. Dre Mason says replace Nelly with Tim Patrick. Shit. Tim Patrick's already off the board. And remember, in 2021, the Ravens were in on Tim Patrick. David Rice says Bateman hasn't hit his ceiling yet. He really came on last year late in the season. Zone's ready to start the agenda of likely being wide receiver 1. Listen, let's just make sure that Mark and Isaiah can coexist together on the same field first and foremost, all right? Come on. Thinking with Omo says that they've been waiting since 4 p.m. to see if Bo Braid made it. I sure hope so. Nate, welcome in from New Zealand. Appreciate you for being here. Over 700 concurrents right now inside the channel across Twitter and YouTube. Thanks for being here, guys. Like the video if you've been enjoying the content. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we're dropping our daily content. And before we get into some roster talk, a quick word from Preston Automotive Group, which is today's sponsor. And you know that they are the sole reason why I'm driving around and have been since October in a 2023 Ford Bronco Sport, my white OJ Bronco. No, it's not an OJ Bronco. It is my white Ford Bronco, and I love it. It is so good on gas, so spacious, so comfortable, so slick. Bobby Baltimore subscribers receive 2 exclusive offers, $500 towards a new or pre-owned vehicle, or when you buy 4 tires, You'll receive 50% off your alignment. You've got over 2,000 vehicles to shop from. Home delivery is available. You'll be joining the Preston team along with myself, Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton, tight end Mark Andrews, and many more throughout Baltimore and beyond. Cars cost less with Preston. You can get started today by visiting PrestonMotor.com or just simply scan the QR code that you see in the upper right-hand corner. All this information can be found in the show notes below. And I'll quickly show you, just briefly here, what the site's looking like before we get back to roster talk. And I'm going to be refreshing my tweet deck as much as possible. I hope you guys are as well, just in case something drops. And the Ravens are clearly in no rush whatsoever. But here's a look at the site. Amanda's your site operator. She can help you out 24/7. You can contact Preston easily. And then my favorite part is just scrolling through the available inventory, which can be broken down category by category, price range, vehicle type, year, make, model, location, dealership, body style, so on and so forth. I really, really enjoy Preston as a sponsor of mine, as a brand partner of mine, and I hope that if you are in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, that you'll consider them. Let's get into some roster chatter. We'll begin with the most recent move reported by Brian Wacker of the Baltimore Sun, who tweeted out just a short while ago. No surprise, veteran wide receiver Keith Kirkwood has been released. The plan is to sign him to the practice squad, according to Brian. And so now, all three, based on reports, all three veteran wide receivers that the Ravens brought in this summer, Kirkwood being the first, Russell Gage being the second, and Anthony Miller being the latter of those three, all are not expected to make this team. I don't find this to be surprising. I know some of you probably had a thought about Anthony Miller or were excited about Anthony Miller. But this came from Jeff earlier today that he is also going to be released by this team. He didn't sign with the Ravens until about halfway through camp. Played very well, had an immediate connection with Lamar. But as Jeff noted, he is a vested vet, so he's not subject to waivers. Wouldn't surprise me or Jeff if he ends up being re-signed to the practice squad. So perhaps Kirkwood and Anthony Miller could be two of your Ravens wide receivers on the initial practice squad. We'll learn more about that in just a bit. But this does kind of open the door and beg the question, and something that we're going to be waiting to find out. Is Dayton Wade's opportunity right there in front of him? Will Dayton Wade end up being one of the undrafted rookies to make the Ravens roster? I would have to think that right now Bo Braid has the better chance in terms of these two. Bo is obviously on the defensive side of the ball, at safety, out of Maryland. Dayton, it's a packed wide receiver room. If we're looking at six, you're probably looking at Zay, Rashad, Nelly, Tylen, Deontay, and Nelly all before Dayton. And that's just kind of how it is. The reason why I say Deontay, I know you haven't seen a lot of him this summer because of injury. But when you look at the guaranteed money and the contract that he received, kind of makes it feel like he's in their plans and probably going to serve as a primary return specialist role, given his background. And so if I had to guess, the six that I'm expecting are those six, and I would have to think that Dayton Wade may not end up being a part of that. Now, he may also not clear waivers, which would be tough, right? If he doesn't clear waivers and the Ravens can't bring him back to the practice squad, he's gone. Jamari checking in. Let's see what's up in the live chat right now. Jamari saying that Mark Andrews would have had 1,000 yards receiving if he didn't get injured last year. Ravens 912 says, I feel like Zay and Lamar will vouch for Dayton Wade. We'll see how much influence they have if that ends up being the case. Nobody's particularly surprised, right, with these veteran moves at wide receiver. I certainly am not. At the same time, Anthony Miller came on, and if you have an injury, he'll be chilling right there waiting for you on the practice squad if they indeed give him that opportunity. Elsewhere, this one came out yesterday, but being that he was a familiar face and name, he's been in the organization for a couple of years, it's relevant to the fan base. Pepe Williams has been waived, according to Jeff's source. He struggled the last preseason game. Jeff also noted he never really found a spot on special teams, and it's a packed cornerback room. Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, Ardarius Washington, Jalen Armour-Davis, and TJ Tampa. Plus, Williams is more of a nickel, and we all know that Kyle Hamilton can be used in that role at times, as others can as well. Whether it be Ardarius or Arthur Maulette when he's healthy. So it's a jam-packed room. Pepe and Jalen Armour-Davis were always sort of attached to the hip, being that they were both 2022 fourth rounders, being that they both have been unable to stay healthy, and that both are cornerbacks. But it sure looks like the JAD is going to have an immediate future with this team. And Pepe, according to Jeff's sources, which are always reliable, is going to get the boot. We talked about Kadir, but let's have another conversation about him right now. This one came in earlier today, also from Jeff. And they do indeed plan on waiving Kadir Ismail, former college wide receiver at Samford and Villanova, got an opportunity and an invitation to participate in the open minicamp for a tryout, rookie minicamp. Made the most of his chances, and now Jeff and other reporters are noting that not sure there was another player in camp who improved more than Kadir. He's a former college QB, former wide receiver, like I mentioned, so converted quarterback to wide receiver to tight end. And yeah, if he clears waivers, would love for the Ravens to keep the Ismail name in the family. I know Kadri's fired up. Certainly a proud summer, proud moments for Kadri. Congratulations to the Ismail family. Any other team, perhaps he sneaks his way onto the 53 with how he performed at tight end. Not when you have a star-studded room that are just about as established as you can be in this league. Well, what a mystery this is. Tyus Bowser, in terms of former Ravens that are garnering some attention this week. Dalvin Cook is one of them who's visited the Dallas Cowboys. Spent part of last year on the Ravens practice squad and on the 53. But in addition to Dalvin, the Cowboys also are scheduled to meet with Tyus Bowser. We know he's a former Baltimore Raven outside linebacker, and injuries, as Todd wrote, kept him off the field for most of the last 2 years. Now, Sarah and I had a disagreement about this earlier today because I tweeted out, was it really injuries that kept him off the field a year ago? Was there more to the story? I hate to speculate, but the messaging kind of begged the question. What the hell was going on with Tyus Bowser a year ago, and why did he not play? John Harbaugh, to say the very least, seemed to be perturbed, annoyed, and just over the thought of Tyus Bowser when it comes to the persistent questions that were posed his way much throughout last year. Everybody continue to refresh. It is now 7:15, and the Ravens 53-man roster has yet to be announced. Oh, they just stick to their guns, don't they? I don't know why it's taking so long. But yet here we are. Elsewhere, the Ravens have waived Emory Jones, their undrafted rookie who split time in the preseason, not evenly split, but did get time at quarterback along with Devin Leary, the 6th-round pick out of Kentucky, T. Martin's hand pick, quarterback's coach. And so Emory perhaps could end up on the Ravens practice squad if he clears waivers. I know some of you didn't feel like he got a fair shot in terms of opportunity. Devin Leary got a shot and put a lot out there on tape. It wasn't great. I didn't like what I saw from Devin Leary. He seemed as if he wasn't ready for the moment and that the speed was, quite frankly, too much for him from a processing standpoint. So Emory, we'll see if he ends up on the practice squad. But at quarterback, this is where we're at. I'm glad from an ambiance standpoint, Jeremiah, that you can hear the crickets. It's getting a little dark, too, by the way. It's getting a little dark earlier, well before 8. I am in upstate New York, for those of you who have been following my summer. So I will be heading back down for the home opener week 2 because I do my pregame shows outside the stadium at the Be More Around Town tailgate. But I'll be doing week 1 Thursday night, either in Kansas City. That might come together last minute. And if it doesn't, then I'll be here in upstate. But yeah, it's so peaceful back here. And what's even more peaceful is realizing that I've worked on this house literally all summer long, and it's looking like $1 million for my mother. Love it. All right, the wait continues, which means we got to keep coming up with content here, and we will. I came prepared just in case the Ravens were going to stretch this out the way that they clearly are. Has to come out soon. I will have to break for dinner at some point there. We're doing a late dinner on the back porch. But I know you all remember Miles Boykin. Perhaps you're haunted by Miles Boykin, former Ravens wide receiver out of Notre Dame. The New York Giants, he's had a couple stints in the NFL since the Ravens let him walk, and that has been in Pittsburgh and New York. But now the Giants are releasing him. They want to bring him back to the practice squad. But my, oh my, I think we all remember who the Ravens could have drafted in 2019 when they took 2 wide receivers. Marquise was in the first round. I want to say Boykin was in the third, right? Was Miles Boykin a third-round pick? Anywho, those were the 2 wide receivers that EDC chose in 2019. And we all remember, even though he's become a headache in Seattle, DK Metcalf was there for the taking and they passed on him. Oh, how things could have been very, very, very different. Manuel, no barbecue. We're doing, I think we're doing an Italian takeout dinner tonight, I think. Who knows? We all work all day long here. It's my mother, my brother, and I, and sometimes we just feel like doing takeout. Boykin was the 3rd rounder. Thank you. Thank you for looking that up. Well, what about this? What about Tony Jefferson? Are you kidding me? So the Chargers announced their cuts and announced their 53-man roster hours ago. Would have been nice if the Ravens followed suit. And among those who made the 53-man roster was former Raven Tony Jefferson, one of probably your fan favorite Ravens over the years. He is now 32 years old. And the best part about it, as we learned when we had him on over draft weekend, is that Tony retired from the league and spent last year as a member of Eric DeCosta's scouting department. He essentially interned with Eric DeCosta as a scouting personnel assistant. So Tony hangs it up. He lives in San Diego. He's leaving his kids and family on a weekly basis to go grind and figure out if this is something that he's interested in terms of the scouting world. Realizes he still has an itch. Balls out during the preseason game. Well, first of all, got an opportunity to sign with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, which we know is Ravens West. And now he's found his spot on the 53. I am so incredibly happy for Tony Jefferson. He is a great guy. He is somebody who is just a genuinely good human being. And now he's going to get a shot to resurrect his career in LA. I know, it's tough to see yet another former Raven, and a beloved one at that, sign with the Chargers. But I think we can all be happy that TJ's still rolling. Sip the tally. Coach, I know you did that live stream earlier with Ing, hoping that the roster would drop midstream, weren't you? I know what you were doing. because it's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm sitting on a dark porch right now in upstate New York hoping for this dang thing to drop midstream. But it ain't coming, is it? It ain't coming. Everybody say hello to Coach Evans. That's the guy. I caught some of your live stream earlier. And I will tell you, that clip that Sarah found of you that we added to the stream within the last couple of days is pretty funny. You're doing great work as always, my friend. Can't wait to reunite soon. We got to do that. It's been a minute. Listen, bottom line, Raven C is if the Ravens wait to 11:59, I'm going to be running hot. I might send around a few choice word tweets. Probably wouldn't be helpful, but we'll see. Elsewhere, let's get to the Tim Patrick conversation. The tweet below there from Mike Kliss out in Denver came first, which was yesterday. And that was this, that with significant depth and talent at wide receiver, the Broncos are moving on from popular veteran Tim Patrick. This was probably just given to Mike so that you could try and garner up some interest, right? Trade suitors. Didn't happen. He ended up not walking. The Broncos released Tim Patrick with a number of other players, including running back Samaje Perine. So I'd have to think that he will be looked at as a worthy candidate for some running back needy team. Sam Mustipher spent last year in Baltimore. He was also released in that group as I refresh Twitter to make sure that we're up to date. But anyway, just because Tim Patrick is a wide receiver that the Ravens were in on a few years ago, 2021 to be exact, reportedly, I figured it'd be fun to bring it up. But the reason why I'm not even going to spend too much time on it is because what we all know. And that is the fact that, quite frankly, he has not played in this league over the last 2 years. And the Ravens, while he fits the Ravens puzzle at wide receiver free agency in recent years, right? Cheap, old, injury riddled, that type of thing. They've been burnt there before. I don't see them going back to that well. And if they do, Lord Almighty, please don't go back to that well, EDC. You don't need Tim Patrick. Okay, let's look at the Cleveland situation right now. The initial 53-man roster, which they brought, and Daniel Oyefusi, former beat writer for the Baltimore Sun, now covering really, I think, a good portion of the NFL for ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. Daniel noted here that they are keeping 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Tyler Huntley, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Remember what the Ravens did to him in his NFL debut a year ago? Oh, my Lord. I actually felt bad for DTR, legitimately. Deshaun Watson, of course, who's going to be their starter, and Jameis Winston. So 4 QBs on the initial roster. Will all 4 be there week 1? I doubt it. And as Sarah and I discussed earlier today, what team is willing to trade for Tyler Huntley? Like, has he truly given you an opportunity or given you sort of the incentive that you're willing to give up a late round draft pick for Tyler Huntley? I mean, depends on how desperate you are. At this point, we know what Tyler is. He was serviceable, but he wasn't more than serviceable. And I think that's all sort of very similar to what the Ravens currently have in the building as their primary backup. I think Josh is serviceable. Josh is experienced. Josh is a game manager, but he's not going to keep you in a playoff race should Lamar go down for a short amount of time at some point down the stretch. And it's just like, hey, steer the ship. Make sure that we're still relevant when I get back. Like, I don't see him being a candidate to be that kind of guy. Cleveland has definitely one in Jameis Winston, one of the better, more experienced backups around the league. But the reason why I brought this up was earlier today, Mary Kay Cabot got some scoop here, maybe similar to what the Broncos were trying to do in Denver, stir up some conversation here, some buzz. But Mary Kay tweeted that DTR was informed that he made the team and that the Browns would field calls for Jameis and Snoop and could trade one of them. You would have thought that would have happened by now, but we'll wait and see. Who do you guys think are the best backups in the league? Guys that come to mind are Jameis Winston, Jake Browning. How can you not say Joe Flacco after what he did for Cleveland a year ago? Carson Wentz, at least the old Carson Wentz. He's now in Kansas City backing up Patrick Mahomes, of course. I'm thinking about other rosters that are out there. Denver's got a lot of quarterbacks. I don't know what Zach Wilson is at this point in his career. Certainly was seeing ghosts during his time in New York. But they did go with Bo Nix. He's going to be QB1, and they did keep Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson on their 53-man roster. So we'll see what becomes of that quarterback room. You know, I see these comments all the time. D. Lava says Cam Newton would be great. A few years ago, he would be. I just think you forget how far removed he and RG3 are. Multiple years now from playing in the NFL. I just can't get behind that. That's concerning. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Joe Flacco came back to Baltimore? I could never see it happening. Stephanie, wouldn't it be something? Don't see that being very, very possible. Lance Wade checking in on Malik Cunningham. You know, you forget that basically now two organizations, New England and Baltimore, haven't really given Malik a shot at what he played in college, which was quarterback. Now, I'm not sitting here disputing, the evaluation processes of two organizations, but let's just say I hope that the Ravens did their due diligence on that. It's hard to believe that he couldn't be seen as QB3 based on what we saw from Devin Leary, right? Could he be worse than Devin Leary at this point? Yeah, and Romy Raven and I are on the same page. Malik can't be worse than Devin Leary. Yeah. Too funny. We have yet to receive 53-man rosters officially. We've got over 1,100 of you in here concurrently watching this, and we're all waiting. We're all waiting. Somebody just asked where is Tyrod Taylor? He is with the Jets. Former Raven Tyrod Taylor is with the New York Jets. I believe he'll be the primary backup to Aaron. It is now 8 o'clock Eastern, 4 hours after the deadline has passed, and yet no moves made yet from the Ravens social accounts. We continue to refresh and we continue to get through other content in the meantime. The Cleveland Browns are releasing James Prochet, former Ravens wide receiver, but the plan is to bring him back. He is a viable punt returner for them to call up from the practice squad on game days, according to Jeremy Fowler. Prochet has had a rough go. He was always that guy in the summer this time of year, perhaps earlier this time of year, that you felt like was the first one in, last one out, garnering a ton of different buzz and attention, looked at as a breakout guy, and yet it never really came to fruition. I wish him the best. He's had a rough couple of years. He lost his mother within the last year or two. And for his sake, I hope he figures it out. But as of right now, he is not on the initial 53-man roster in Cleveland. Elsewhere, I figured you guys might appreciate this one. That Odell Beckham Jr. will not be available for the Miami Dolphins right out of the start of the season. And he'll begin the year on the physically unable to perform list. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network noting that when Miami signed him in May, they were aware this was a possibility due to an offseason procedure that he had. OBJ's worked hard, but Miami felt the best path was to ease him in. It's a long-term decision. Well, stop me if that sounds familiar. We all remember the OBJ experience, and while it was a very pleasant one, he never truly earned the contract, the overpay that the Ravens were willing to invest in him for a one-year stint. A lot of money for not a lot of production. It sure seems like Miami's going to be looking at something similar, at least off the top. They're going to be careful with him. He is aging. He is not what he once was. But they don't need to. Best part for the Dolphins is they don't need him to be what he once was because of how stacked their wide receiver room is. And we all know that's the case right now. And all of you guys chiming in on your OBJ thoughts. Yes, we are burning the midnight oil waiting on this 53-man roster to be announced. It's a total joke that it hasn't yet. The Ravens are the only team in the league, and I'm sitting out here in the dark right now waiting for their roster to be announced. It's absurd. Stacy with a point. Baltimore may be making a trade. We'll see. See if Eric gets a little busy prior to this announcement. Sure would be awesome if they could bring in some offensive line help. Elsewhere, we'll keep it going with the former Raven train, and that is Shaun Wade, a former cornerback. He's going to be waived by the New England Patriots. He's been on the roster since he was acquired in a trade with the Ravens back in 2021, if you remember Shaun Wade. Had a cup of coffee in Baltimore, didn't work out. Ravens sent him packing up to New England, where he's been ever since, and he'll be looking for a team at some point here. And yes, as I've mentioned a couple times, Madre, who is just one room over to my left, don't the Ravens know we're ready to eat dinner? That means that takeout has arrived, and that also is English for get the frick off the channel. Get the frick off the live stream, son, and get your butt inside. And here she comes for a cameo.
For dinner.
Yes, it is time. Let's go this. Let's get you here. Ready? Let's get you big screen here for a little bit of FaceTime. The roster has yet to, let's just refresh it for you. Yeah, the roster's not yet been revealed, but we're going to have to shut this thing down. I promised you I would. And that's what we're going to do.
But I guess we'll eat inside while we wait for you.
Live chat's loving you. Live chat is loving. And they're also loving your new backyard, which we can now see perfectly because of today's tree remover by our neighbors. So that's that.
Enjoying all of the fruits of your hard work.
Sure you don't want to come on for a few minutes? We can all just sit around here and do it together.
We'll have Tori and John come on.
Is the food here? Is the food here?
Almost.
All right, well, just knock when it is. We'll,
We're ready to have a party here.
We'll milk it up as much as possible then. That's true. Yeah, our sister. So we all just got back from a family wedding. And Mom, you can take that up with Eric DaCosta, by the way. Okay. But yeah, it's a late dinner. Obviously, it's 8:00. We're all getting back we're all basically here. I mean, I've been here all summer working on these projects. But we're coming off the wedding weekend in Cooperstown for one of my cousins. And so we all just been here. My sister flies back to Denver on Thursday, so we're just trying to do as many dinners together as possible. Robbie, thank you for the super chat donation. As much as I want to bring you to the dinner table, she would kill me. She was a good sport there, wasn't she? Oh man, that's funny. I love this. I love this right here. On a nice little sweet moment, Truth Time comes in here, and he has to throw daggers around. The stuff that he knows nothing about. But I'll tell Truth Time, and we'll move on quickly. Hey, Truth, here's the truth, buddy boy. My mom is a single empty nester mother, okay, approaching 60, who lives by herself and who doesn't have the means to do what I did this summer, meaning doesn't have the physical ability to do what I did this summer and doesn't have the resources to do what I did this summer, which is why I multitasked all summer and fixed her entire house, okay? I've had a place down in Baltimore for years. Take your bullshit elsewhere. How about that? All right, where else are we? Brandon Ayuk. I found this to be interesting earlier. So Brett Coleman, super popular YouTuber, he put forth a trade proposal that, in his words, would solve a lot of problems. In this proposal, San Francisco would receive a 2025 first rounder from the Ravens. Pause. They're never doing that. Okay? They're never doing that. They would also receive Rashad Bateman from the Ravens. They would also receive a 2025 second rounder from Chicago. And they would also receive Braxton Jones from Chicago. The Bears would receive Trent Williams, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, stud, tackle. And the Ravens would receive Brandon Ayuk. Brett goes on to note that the Ravens would be tight on money, but restructures theoretically make it doable. The Bears get a short-term upgrade at left tackle to help Caleb during his development. The 49ers set themselves up to be able to easily pay Brock and get picks and get players who can immediately contribute right now. There's no way. There's no way they're doing this. Right? There's no way they're doing this. And my friend Ken McCusick from Film Study literally just tweeted seconds ago a response to this, and I want to read it for you. He wrote, Brandon Ayuk is about to play on his fifth-year option for $14.1 million. After that, he'll set the market for salary at wide receiver with a deal that is likely to exceed CeeDee Lamb's. The surplus value, which is the amount his play is worth relative to the cap space on his contract after 2024, will be very close to zero. For 2024, it could be $10 million. There is no way in hell the Ravens should give up Bateman and a first, or just a first for that matter, for $10 million of surplus value. If you look back a few years, the Browns took on a mess of cap dollars for a second-round pick by eating the contract of Brock Osweiler from the Broncos. I'm retweeting this because it's really, really good. The Steelers have more than $79 million of cap space in 2025 and aren't budging on the draft capital because trading that much and using the cap dollars is simply bad business. For many, many reasons, this proposal is not an attractive one and not one that the Ravens would consider. I would be shocked if that were the case. First and foremost, why on earth would they give up a first rounder? You know that the Ravens don't just give up first rounders. And second of all, given what Ken just noted, it just doesn't make any sense monetarily. Plus, while Bateman hasn't even come close to reaching his ceiling, we know that Bateman is as team-friendly as it gets, and if he can break out or if he can become just a complementary piece, that'll end up being really, really, really economical for the Ravens and a total bargain. And that's something they were willing to bet on for a few years. Coming up tomorrow night, guys, episode number 3 of our weekly AFC North Roundtable goes down. We're talking the final 53-man breakdown if, and it could be a big if the way we're going right now, if the Ravens end up posting their 53-man roster. It has still not been posted. It is now almost 8:15, 4 hours and 12 minutes after the deadline of when these needed to be complete. Perhaps the Ravens are mixing and matching in the front office. I don't know, but we'll have to watch. And if you aren't familiar with the Roundtable, Wednesdays at 6 o'clock Eastern, all season long, I'll be going back and forth with content creators from every single team in the AFC North. And here's a little look at what it looks like.
Roundtable Sports Network brings you NFL divisional debate coverage on a weekly basis from your favorite content creators across YouTube, featuring the AFC East Roundtable live Monday and Wednesday evenings, the AFC South Roundtable live Tuesdays at 7 p.m. EST, the NFC South Roundtable live Tuesdays at 7 p.m. EST. The NFC West Roundtable live Tuesdays at 9 p.m. EST. The AFC West Roundtable live Tuesdays at 9 p.m. EST. The NFC North Roundtable live Wednesdays at 6 p.m. EST. The AFC North Roundtable live Wednesdays at 6 p.m. EST. The NFC East Roundtable live Thursdays at 6 p.m. EST. Roundtable Sports. Real coverage from real fans.
Six o'clock Eastern tomorrow night. Look forward to hanging out with you guys then. I want to be sure to shout out and thank a couple of my returning patrons who have been supporting me throughout the last several months, and it means a lot for the channel. It means a lot for just to have your support in general. Lido Thompson and Kevin Malarkey, thank you both for believing in what I'm building. If you guys are interested in doing the same, you can join the Bobby Baltimore Patreon community by visiting patreon.com/Bobby Trosset. There's more information on that in the show notes below. If you rather do one-time stuff, you can do so through Venmo or Cash App easily, which you can see on the screen. And what else do I have going on? A special thank you to Preston Automotive Group for sponsoring this episode, my entire channel. And I also have some super chats to get to before we jump. You're noticing that I'm getting the call. Like I have to go. I have to go eat dinner with the family. I have to turn some lights on, assuming that this thing's going to get released a little bit later on, and I'll do a late night version. Or if I don't do a late night version tonight, if it just comes out too darn late, then Sarah and I, of course, will do our own analysis breakdown, assuming that it's posted by 12 noon Eastern tomorrow. Chef Trez, thank you, brother, for your donation. Bobby, how could you go live as I'm eating dinner with my girlfriend? I can't pay attention to both of you. You know who to pay attention to, and it ain't me. All right. Robbie, thank you, brother. And not a fan. F that truth, dude, hating. Do your thing. Sacrifice time with my Dukes to keep us up to date. We appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you for sure. And let's just see what's happening here. Pro Football Talk just a short minute ago tweeted out that the moves to the 53 by the Ravens, Giants, and Buccaneers aren't yet known due to an apparent issue with the NFL's in-house waiver wire. No way. Okay, now I'm really going. You guys hear that? Here it goes. The moves made to the 53 by the Ravens, Giants, and Buccaneers are not yet known publicly due to an apparent issue with the NFL's in-house waiver wire. Okay? So that's what's going on. Pro Football Talk has the whole piece for you on Twitter, so go check that out. Hopefully it gets wrapped up by tonight. Hopefully it gets wrapped up by noon Eastern tomorrow, because that's when Sarah and I will next be live. So there's something going on in terms of the in-house waiver wire. That's what's delaying this. It's been 4+ hours. I'm going to go to dinner. Please like the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell. Go check us out on the Vault for daily Ravens content. I appreciate you guys for being here, and we'll catch up soon. That was a fun time, and glad you guys got to meet Mom. Talk to you soon.